What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Most Amazing. You saw the title, you saw the thumbnail, you're intrigued. Let's do it. Here are the top 10 mysterious things found floating on water. Let's dive in. Kicking off the list at number 10, Garfield phones. The Garfield craze began back in 1978. Jim Davis brought to life this lasagna-loving cat, the OG grumpy cat, really, we all know that. And as his popularity grew, so did his merch. A Garfield couch with eyes that's really anybody wants. But the last thing you would expect to see floating in the ocean are Garfield phones. Also, yes, I said phones, as in more than one. There's a lot. Thousands of Garfield phones have slowly been washing up ashore in France for 30 years. Imagine just standing, looking at the ocean, thinking about your ex, pondering life, and then a Garfield phone washes up. You're like, fine, I'll call her. Just not on Monday. I hate Mondays. This began in the 80s, but until recently, we didn't know where they came from. Mysterious Garfield phones for 30 years. Some guy's like writing, he's like, where are these things coming from? We need to know. A farmer read about these phones in an article and how they could, be hurting the environment and all that jazz. And then he came forward and admitted that he knew about the shipping container full of Garfields. Yeah, Rain Morvan. He says in the 80s, he found the shipping container in a sea cave. Imagine thinking you found some of the lost billions worth of treasure in the ocean, but then you just open it and it's this shit. Just pieces of Garfield phones that were left over. And also, by that point, it was too late. Nothing was left in the container, just pieces of it. They were all floating in the ocean. Also, if the ocean gives you a plastic Garfield phone, answer it. Answer the call. Hit the thumbs up, answer those calls. Number 9, closed beach. Okay, you're heading to the beach, you got your flip-flops, a little bit of sunblock on your nose that you haven't rubbed in for some reason. You look ready for the part, but then when you arrive to the beach, it's taped off. Nobody is allowed to get those tan lines. What could possibly be going on? Is there an explosive on the beach or something? What is this? Yeah, that's exactly what happened. Last year, a 100-pound aerial explosive from World War II was found washed up along a North Carolina beach. German U-boats would target the area during World War II, nicknaming it Torpedo Junction, so it's not really too odd that something floated in here. But today it's more commonly known as Hatteras Beach. Even the iconic lighthouse from the late 1800s, that was closed off to tourists while this was happening. There was a half-mile safety parameter just in case. But after a close inspection of the explosive, it appeared that it was still live. So while the explosive was in the water, they detonated it before, anybody else accidentally did during a game of Marco Polo. Number 8, floating islands. Imagine you're on the open water in Peru and then you see some boats pass yours. It's nice, the water's calm, the sun is beating down. And then all of a sudden, instead of passing an island full of people, the island full of people passes you. You heard me, the floating islands of Lake Titicaca are man-made islands. There's about 70 of them and they all reside in the Bay of Puno. You'll find these and they're all made of braided roots from Totora. The tribe of the Uru, Choluni, live here and their ancestral culture is linked to the lake. So every 20 days or so, a new layer of Totora is added to the surface to avoid the island from, sinking. And these islands, by the way, they're also massive. They fit around 5 to 7 families. They fish and make crafts aboard these islands, which they of course sell after to tourists. Number 7, glass. I've played every Zelda game numerous times, okay? I take my time with those. I break every jar, I check every corner, and collect as much as I can as I go. So if I saw one of these floating in the ocean, I would for sure think I found a quest item. These glass orbs were originally made by a Norwegian glass company back in 1842. Large fish nets would be attached to these today, but now they're made of aluminum and plastic. Back then, glass was the real deal. They didn't get waterlogged like cork did, and also sea worms couldn't get to them. And most importantly, they're beautiful to look at. So every year in Lincoln City on the West Coast, there's a big hunt where about 3,000 glass orbs are hidden on a public beach. Now, if you're lucky, you might find an original float-in, but the odds of that happening are, you never know. The Garfield phone thing, it might happen. I've been watching glass blowing shows on Netflix. This sounds like the coolest job ever. Yeah, my dad makes glass. He makes glass orbs. Is he a magician? Maybe. I'll never tell. Number 6, tombstones. Back in 2012, the world did not end, obviously, but if you believed it was going to, and then you saw a tombstone wash up on a popular beach, you probably never sleep. That's a sign. It's a clear sign. That's exactly what beachgoers experienced back in May 2012. Two friends were on a nice beach walk. They were talking about their life and goals and aspirations, all that good stuff. And they were on the coast of San Francisco's Ocean Beach when something that looked like a fridge started to crash through the water and wash up. It was not a fridge, however, it was even worse. A tombstone from the year 1876. Huh? That's haunting. It originally belonged to a woman named Emma Bosworth, and then just 1 month later, another stone rolled up. That's terrifying. The condition they were in also alarmingly good. You'd expect, as I'm describing, that it's like old and broken, and there's pieces that wash up, you have to put them together and be like, who is this? No, they were we read them and we're like, That's Emma. Cool, we got it. The next tombstone belonged to Delia Presby Oliver from 1890. Now the stones came from the Laurel Hill Cemetery after it shut its gates back in the 1940s. So the headstones were used as a makeshift seawall. Then they went through the ocean, had a good time, scared a bunch of fish, and then eventually rolled up to these beachgoers. Number 5, giant snowballs. Glass balls floating around and now snowballs? This is a magical one, folks. I love it. In Western Siberia, these giant balls of snow and ice were floating around the Gulf of Ob. Now the entire beach ended up being covered in snowballs as well. It just rolled in and just covered everything. These eventually washed in and then set ashore, setting the grounds for the biggest snowball fight in history, you would think. If you walked by and saw this, you're like, are they filming a movie here? What is this? You just need to be really strong to throw these snowballs. Some were the size of tennis balls, while others had a 3-foot radius. So it's basically just snowman body parts floating around in the water, right? Technically, that's where my brain goes. I'm sick. This rare phenomenon happens where small pieces of ice get rolled by wind and water over and over again, so nature makes these balls for us. Thank you. This also happened in 2010 on Lake Michigan, so it's pretty rare, but keep your eyes open. It could happen. As much as I want to say I hope you see this, don't. Stay away from frozen bodies of water. Stay on a field and then make the snowballs yourself, Keep it real. That's the fun, right? Number 4, Nikes. I threw shoes on my holiday wish list because there's nothing like getting a fresh pair of sneakers. You open it, it's a size and a half too small, but you're like, you know what? I love it. Thank you so much. I'm not even gonna return them. I'm gonna curl my toes for 3 years. Sometimes you find the perfect ones and you don't let them go, and sometimes the shoes find you. In the mid-90s, a shipment of Nike shoes heading to the US was lost during a crazy storm. Around 5 shipping containers, of course, fell over, so cut to, later on, now we have 61,000 pairs just starting to drift towards the west coast. Just shoes on the water, all making their way in. It sounds funny in my head. It's pretty funny. People saw shoes in the water floating in. Do you know how afraid I would be if a shoe brushed against my shoulder while I was taking a dip? My brain would go to the worst place possible. Now these shoes luckily didn't belong to anybody, but they all did have the same serial number by chance. So what started as an ocean mystery ended up working out for the better. Nike lost a lot of money, which is cool, and then we tracked the shoe's journey, learning more about our ocean currents. Win-win. Number 3, eggs. Easter egg hunts are pretty intense. When I hide eggs from my siblings, they never found them growing up. There were also times where I even forgot where I put them. That's how good I was. You hear me? Never put them in your floor vent. That's no good. It gets hot and then yeah, it's gross. Tens of thousands of plastic eggs surrounded a German beach back in 2017 along the North Sea near Germany-Netherlands border. Now these plastic eggs were released to the open waters after a storm threw a shipping container overboard. So the way they cleaned all these up, by the way, was just genius. They literally just told a bunch of kids, hey, there's Easter eggs here, go clean them up. And then they gladly did the largest plastic ocean cleanup in like one day. It was amazing. Number 2, pipes. Where's Mario when you need him? Guy's always running around. Back in 2017, these massive pipes washed upon the shores of the northern Norfolk coast. If I was swimming and I saw this thing floating towards me, I would faint. I would think it's a giant sea snake and I'd be like, I would have no idea what I was looking at. And people really didn't at first. When they were swimming, people saw this in the water and they're like, let's get out. That's clearly a monster. I didn't realize how big these pipes were at first, but now I think I have submechanophobia, the fear of large things and bodies of water. You're welcome. Now you have it as well. These pipes were lost at sea following an accident on an Iceland container ship. The classic container ship oopsie, dropping Garfield phones, Lego, and accidentally cutting loose 500-meter long pipes, that sort of stuff. Yeah, they were massive. As soon as the first one drifted ashore on the coast, obviously you could see them coming. The company that produced them, Pipe Life, they urged the curious to stay far away. You can see them coming because they're the size of buildings, and they can obviously crush you. These things have a diameter of 2 meters, and the longest one that washed up was 500 meters long. And finally, number 1. Challenger parts. When the Challenger broke apart 73 seconds after liftoff on January 28, 1986, the ship's fuselage broke apart and sadly the lives of all 7 crew members were taken. Now the ship exploded and sent pieces into the ocean, and a decade later, parts of America's lost history began floating back near the waters around the Kennedy Space Center. The Challenger initially landed about 22 miles away, and all that time later, this piece that weighs hundreds of pounds came back home. This creeps some people out, but it kind of gives me a little comfort, if anything. The fact that 11 years later this started to swim back, sure, that's how currents work and all, but that close to that same space center, it's the heart. I don't know. Something's going on here. While this one isn't exactly mysterious, it's a nicer one to end this list off. Debris from the Challenger is currently on display at the Forever Remembered Memorial at the Kennedy Space Center. Go check it out. Guys, I've been your host, Taylor McWaters. Thank you so much for joining us on Most Amazing Top 10, and we'll see you next time. Stay safe. Peace.